I wanted to make a quick run through this week's assignments, just to kind of give you an idea of what I want you to do. So, module activities, syllabus agreement, and syllabus. The only complicated thing about the syllabus and the syllabus agreement is that they're not in the same folder as the rest of the assignments, right? All the rest of the assignments are in the module folder, but the syllabus agreement is in the start here. So under start here, you can find the syllabus. For the syllabus, you have the syllabus document, and you click on this, and then you're going to get to a folder, and there's going to be a syllabus in there. It may not have this exact file name, but there's going to be a document in there that's going to be the syllabus. Syllabus is super important. That's basically everything you need to know about the class, all the real rules, all the legalese associated with class, but also the calendar associated with class. So when your exams are, what your grading scale is, all of that thing is in the syllabus. So read through this. There's a syllabus quiz that looks to see if you've read through the syllabus. And then there's a syllabus agreement. There's also an introductory discussion. Most of the assignments this week are to familiarize you with the course shell itself. I want to make sure that you know how to produce a discussion, but I also want to get to know who you are. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I already wrote something about myself in the discussion. Um, so that's the first three, right? So then we're going to get to the book. There's a link to the book, and then I talk about the SQ3R reading system. Reading a textbook is a skill. So you don't read a textbook like you do a novel. Most textbooks, and our textbook is going to make a liar out of me. Most textbooks use pictures not just for illustrations, but also for to structure things, to summarize things. Um, Biology textbooks are super dense, and so trying to extract information out of them, um, like I said, there's a skill associated with that. And so I want to introduce one of those reading methods with you. People who have an easy time with school, they usually don't. They do this automatically. But if you sometimes struggle, extracting material out of a book, systems like that are very helpful. Then once you've extracted all the material out of the book, there's a quiz. I want to make sure you have access to this PBS, even though there's not an assignment associated with this. I just want to make sure that you have access to it. Um, After all that stress, it's time to have some fun. So create a meme about how you're currently feeling about the class. Um, and then the picture of the study notes, which I think you're probably more confused about than any other assignment ever. Um, but this is a getting to know you assignment. So here's the book. This is the SQ3R reading system. So let's talk about that for just a second. So SQ3R is a reading system. Um, it asks you to, before you start reading, look at what you're getting ready to read. Survey the whole thing. Look at the layout, the chapters, the parts of the chapter. What are the pictures? What's the big picture? Because the way we as people learn, is we put things together by associations. And so if you've got the big picture first, you know kind of where it goes in your brain. You know what drawer to stick it into. Um, and then ask yourself questions. What are they trying to teach you? What is it you're probably going to learn? Um, Set up some expectations, because the expectations you set up in your brain are those expectations that your brain then says, okay, now I'm getting ready to learn this. And then when you learn it, then your brain goes, ah, so that kind of thing, right? Then you read. So keep in the back of your mind what you already know. Then you read. Once you read, repeat aloud to yourself what you've just read. Make notes, review those things. And then one of the things in the review also, you should close the book and see if you can now, based on maybe a layout, maybe look at just the outline, or just the table of contents, and see if you can figure out, or you can tell somebody else, if you can teach somebody else, if you can find a victim in your family, younger sibling, older sibling, parents, friends, roommates, anything is fair. um, the best way to learn is to teach. Um, so this is an example of, this is what this outline looks like for chapter 1. So if we're going to do the survey thing, right? So there seems to be two big parts: themes and concepts of biology, and then the process of science. So we're going to hear probably about science, and we're going to hear some concepts about biology. Now, what are these concepts? Well, this tells us a little bit about that, right? We're going to hear something about the properties of life. We're going to hear something about the organization of living things, and then we're going to hear something about the subdisciplines of biology. In later chapters, I'll give you a thing that I call the tour guide. The tour guide tells you what's important and what's not so important. If we just have one chapter, the tour guide is probably not, the tour guide is probably overkill. But if I'm assigning you 4 or 5 chapters, 2 chapters, 3 chapters, I'll oftentimes tell you skip this part. The subdisciplines in biology, they're nice. I don't really care about the subdisciplines in biology. I mean, like I said, they're nice. They're good for your future. Read through it. I'm not going to test you on it. That's what I'm saying when I don't care, right? I care, but I'm not going to test you on it. Now, this is where the book makes me a liar, because I don't quite understand why this picture is there, what it's supposed to summarize. So this is really just illustration. Um, but then the book says all groups of living organisms share several key organisms, you know, characteristics of functions: order, sensitivity, response to stimuli, reproduction, adaptation, growth and development, regulation, homeostasis, and energy processing. These are the 8 characteristics that define life. This is actually a key thing. Um, in a different book, like the Pearson book, it would show, Pearson says 7, so don't get yourself hung up on the number, because some of these things, they kind of merge together. So you could argue that this thing is kind of like the other. So there's a little bit of divergence here, but either way, these characteristics are important, right? Because this is something somebody can ask you about. What are the characteristics of life? So this is something you should probably write out. Um, the book just gives you a paragraph, and then the book follows it up with, it actually makes it clear. The book makes clear that it's important, because it puts a picture for each of the things that, for each of the characteristics, that were these, 7 or 8 characteristics for life. But it doesn't put it together. It doesn't do the work for you, where you put it together in a list where you can say, these are the 8 important characteristics of life. So when I talk about doing study notes, I'm talking about, you need to pull this information out, and you need to put this information into so you're basically creating, your own little personal PowerPoint. What this looks like, that's up to you. Whether you want to grab the pictures from the existing PowerPoint and put them together on one sheet, or whether you want to just say, I'm just going to make a list. Or are you more visual? Um, and then, you can, and then I want you to think about what these things mean, like metabolism and homeostasis. Those are connected with each other, right? Um, where's energy over here? energy is missing over here. So do a little bit of compare and contrasting. Make your own things. Go look out on the internet, see what Google knows, and then think about if Google is correct or if Google is incorrect. Um, so I want you to think. Primarily in this class, I want you to think. I want you to do. There's going to have to be a little bit memorization, um, because we're going to have some facts, right? There's going to be a lot of vocabulary because we're going to have the words to talk to each other. But beyond that, I hope there's going to be a lot of thinking. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about study notes. So, properties of life, make yourself a sheet where you're going to put together the properties of life in a way that help you remember. Um, think about questions. So if these are the properties of life, then what is it that you know of that's not alive? Um, does everybody have all these properties? Does everybody have, um, you know, does everybody respond to stimulus? Does a plant respond to stimulus? What characteristics are not there? Movement is not there, right? So that's not a characteristic that's necessary. So think about these things. Um, and then the book goes through all these pictures, which are nice, but they help illustrate, right? These help illustrate. They don't help you organize. Um, now then the book helps you organize with this figure, right? This figure goes along with this idea of the levels of organization of living things, um, from the atom and the molecule, the smallest, to the largest. So you start with the atom and the molecule, go from the start. This is you can there's several ways to look at this, and different people organize these differently. So the book organizes it this way. Um, Other books organize it this way. So this is your organ system. Um, these are your or This is your organism, your organ systems, your organ, your tissues, and then your cells. What's really interesting is when you're looking at your tissues, is I want you to actually look at cells, specifically what they look like, because there's something that tells you about what they do when you look at them. But that's a later chapter. Um, and then this one here is, it gives you the picture, what it is, and then it says what it is. So that's your flashcard kind of thing, right? So write these things down, work with the material, do whatever you need to do to just kind of, it's got to be a little hand-eye coordination. This is active. Learning is an active activity. A passive learning doesn't really exist. So me just telling you about things doesn't help you. You do have to actively listen with notes, and again, all of those things, that's a skill. It's a practicable skill. So this is the picture of the from the book. This next figure, I hate this figure. um, it's supposed to tell you about the variety of species, right? The taxonomy of the hierarchy of a dog. So we've got the dog down here, and the way they're trying to explain this is that the full name of the dog would be the species, and then the genus, then the family, then the order, then the class, phylum, kingdom, and domain. And what they're trying to show you here is that on the top rung here, on the domain, you have all these organisms. Um, but then the paramecium and the tree, so then you take a selection of these that are still the animalia, but the paramecium and the tree, they're not part of the animalia. You can go think about what they are part of. What are the paramecium and the tree part of? We'll talk about that later. Um, and then you go down, right, and it's fewer and fewer, and it funnels down into one, um, or in this case two organisms that are then subspecies of each other. So that's how you read this chart. Like I said, I hate this chart. I don't think it's intuitive. Now, I haven't really found an intuitive chart yet. There's the one, right? They're basically trying to explain to you the diversity, the breadth of the diversity of life. And it's hard to figure this out. So the taxonomic ranking system is one of the ways to do this with, right? Then there's this one. There's other ways that are a whole lot more fun. This thing here, and let me see if it comes up. Oh, it comes up in a different page. Hang on, I'm going to pull it over. Pull this thing over. When you click on it, you can. This is literally you can. We're going to explore. Oh man, it's not like let me do that. Come on, you can explore. Well, if this works on your browser, and apparently it doesn't work for me right now, or maybe yes, you can zoom in. So I just scrolled, and you can zoom in. Um, like I said, it's not working too well for me right now, but you can zoom in. Oh, this is doing this automatically. But so when you get this to work, you can zoom in to each of these little branches, each of these little organisms, and there are pictures, and there are people who are they're they're sponsoring like different organisms. It's kind of cute, but that's just a fun thing. Whatever helps you think about, just the fact, grasp the diversity. At this point, I just want you to start to think about the organization of the diversity and the level of diversity that exists. Um, Here we've got the different domain. The book talks about those different domains, and there's probably not a whole lot um, else to say, except why the heck do we have two pictures for one of the domains? Well, because as humans, that's the more important domain, right? But these are in the same domain. So if you wanted to really draw this out for yourself, right, you'd make three things show up, right? So you would show something more like this, where you have the bacteria and the archaea and the eukarya. So again, the study notes have to do with what are the notes? How do you think about this material? Um, do you not do study notes? If you don't do study notes, we maybe need to talk about. We maybe need to teach you how to do study notes. So part of the study notes is getting to know you. That's part of my goal with the study notes. As I mentioned before, the chapter then talks about science in general and biological jobs, which is all interesting, but we're not going to build any information on that. So I'm not going to, test you on that beyond potentially in this chapter quiz. Then we get to the scientific method, and here's a picture that gives you a summary, right? This is so pay attention to the images. Are they a summary? Are they something where you're just simply, is it just simply an illustration or not? Um, so the scientific method starts with an observation. That's a key thing. Again, this is one of those things that people like to ask questions about. What's the first step of the scientific method? It's always an observation. Now, here, different people will tell you different steps of the scientific method. So don't hang yourself up exactly on. But the idea basically is you make an observation, and then you're looking. You're trying for a testable hypothesis. So you form a hypothesis that has to be testable and falsifiable. You make a prediction based on that hypothesis, and then an experiment. Now, this is a very abstract way of thinking about it. And what I want you to do is, how do you think about this? Do you think of it abstractly like that? Would you write it down like that for yourself? Um, do you think more in, a circular kind of, thing? Do you think in concrete um, ways? Um, I think very concrete. Anytime I try to figure something out in my head, how I think about something, I think about it very concretely. And you'll find that when I explain that to you, that I think about it very concretely. When I think about molecules, I literally think about them interacting with each other, like them touching each other, the electron going over to the other side. And you'll find this in my explanations, how I explain things. And that's about it for this week's homework assignment. I hope that makes them a little clearer in terms of what I want you to do.